Time to swallow my. Okay, we're
Okay.
good.
It said recording on the cloud, so I'm hoping that will be the same as getting it to my computer.
We love the cloud. The
Yeah.
cloud is where all the things happen. Okay.
So, you guys, I'm very fortunate today to be here with Emma G, who I first found out about, I want to say maybe 3 months ago. I saw your TED Talk.
Oh, you saw my TED Talk? Is that
Yes,
how you found out about me?
that's I found out about you on there and then on LinkedIn. And
Okay.
I went ahead and messaged you on LinkedIn because I was just blown away by your story, your passion, your commitment to music therapy and everything that you're doing. So I would love, rather than me trying to kind of trace through and give you an intro, I would love for you to just introduce the audience to yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Had that like egotistical moment of this is who I am, world. Hello. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Weston. I didn't know that that's how you found me. It's funny you do these things, and I think it's so prevalent in the world that we live in today. We're constantly creating and creating and posting and trying to sort of make a space for ourselves. Not that, like, I mean, I'm only one person, but you never know who that thing is going to hit or who that's
Right,
going
right.
to reach. And so it's like you look at these things and, like, I mean, doing the TED Talk was amazing. What an honor, what a joy. But at the same time, you're like, I don't know if anybody's actually going to see this
Right,
because
right.
there's so.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. Cool. So I preface all that to say, hello, everybody. My name is Emma G. I am a singer-songwriter by trade for the longest time, but have recently, I want to say recently, no, 17 years ago, evolved and broadened my spectrum to encompass music education. So I've been a vocal teacher for 17 years, almost 18 years, which is wild. And then, of course, that has sort of offered more and more opportunities for me to serve. So I'm also now a youth empowerment through songwriting coach, where I help teenagers reconnect with themselves using the power of songwriting and voice, but also helping them to reconnect with their parents, because songwriting is such a powerful tool for communication. And obviously, I know this firsthand because of my own over 750 original pieces of music that I've written throughout my lifetime, but also just in the way that I have been able to work with other young people to, step into their power, recognize the power of their voice, the power of their truth, and find the vocabulary to express themselves, which I think is a really dire need for the 2023 Gen Z human being. So that's a little bit about me, amongst other
And
things. But we'll
it's
just
well, it's this small facet where, well, first of all, I just want to highlight your work with youth and music as a healing capacity. And so me as a psychologist, I would look at any canal or channel
yeah,
to get something that's in your head or in your heart and have a way to express it, whether it be songwriting, music, art, dance, poetry, anything that can release those emotions.
yeah.
I would look at it like flowing water. So it's like if water's stagnant, it becomes diseased and bacteria ridden. But if it can flow and it has a channel, it can bring back health to it.
That part, yeah. And I think it's funny because, I mean, I'm from New Zealand originally, if you couldn't tell by my strange accent. But my fiance is a Krav Maga self-defense instructor, and so I often, with the kids that I work with the teenagers that I work with, I often find that, you know, songwriting may not necessarily be their quote unquote thing, but there are so many different parts to music that can hit people differently. So I often, when I'm working with a vocal student, I will compare them to a tree, and I'll make what makes a tree strong, the roots. What makes you strong, your roots. And the roots of your voice are your diaphragm. But then when it comes to things like, writing songs, and you'll laugh at this, I often compare the art of writing a song to an MMA fight, because, like, the verses of a song are similar to that of, like, when you're in the beginning stages of, getting your distance right when you're in the ring, or just doing some shadow boxing and sort of like warming up and things. And then the chorus is like, okay, you're making contact, you're doing some damage, you're getting some points. And then finally, the bridge, which is what I call the punch to the feelings of the song,
Cool.
that's the finish the fight. This is my take home message, mom and dad, or ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend, or friend that hurt me, or dog that died. This is what I'm trying to say.
This
And so
is the
that's,
meaning and the purpose. This is
yeah,
the grist of all of it.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, music therapy is definitely a thing. My approach may not be the most common, but but it's one of the things that I love so much, is that, like, Gen Z is it's a different generation than we've ever seen before.
Yeah,
So we need to be able to learn how to figure out ways to connect with them and empower them differently.
absolutely. And Emma, what was so inspiring to hear, because I think, you can title yourself as a youth empowerment and a music coach, a teacher, music therapy, but your unique story about growing up and what you went through in your early childhood also gave you this springboard to understand biochemistry, brain chemistry, neurology. And so I'd love if you could talk a little bit about your early diagnoses and what you went through with your cyst, and give the audience some information about that, because for me, that really, before we even hopped on, you talk about being a holistic version of yourself, and to me that seemed like it was your springboard into understanding yourself holistically. And then it really drew this passion out of you to go find your purpose and your meaning because of what you were enduring and maneuvering.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think, I mean, first of all, you make me sound way cooler than I am. But it's one of those things, like, we're constantly as human beings, I think, trying to figure out what our purpose is and how we fit in the world. At least in every conversation I've ever had with anybody, that's been the crux of, the topics that I sort of explore with people. Um, and for me, I mean, I always knew that I wanted to be a musician. I always knew that, I was always making up songs and singing around the house and playing guitar and playing piano and playing violin badly, and, trying to play the drums, but I was told I was too passive aggressive, but whatever, that's another conversation. Um, However, when I was 5, and keep in mind, so let me go back a little bit. I was born with a relatively rare neurological condition called hydrocephalus. Now, I say relatively rare because I grew up in New Zealand and it's incredibly rare there. Here in the States, there's, I think, about 1 million cases nationwide. And it shows up differently for everybody. Not everybody has my type of hydrocephalus. In fact, I recently learned from the Hydrocephalus Awareness Association, which is actually based up the road in Rockville, Maryland from me,
Awesome.
that there's a huge number of elderly patients that are being misdiagnosed with dementia when in fact they actually have hydrocephalus. So I thought that was quite fascinating. However, my specific case of hydrocephalus, I was diagnosed at 4 months of age, because my head was growing disproportionately to my body. And the doctors were like, this is not normal. Let's figure out what's happening. So to give your listeners some perspective, everybody's brains floats in water, otherwise known as cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF for short. And apologies if my hands are kind of going weird, or you can see a tail going in the screen here. My cat has decided to join
I
this
did see a
conversation.
I was like, what is that? And I was like, I think it's a cat, but it might be. Okay. Cool.
It's just my cat getting involved. She does this. She's my support animal. anymore. No, I'm kidding. So everybody's brains floats in water. Now that water changes by about 400 to 600 milliliters a day, going into your head and then draining down your spinal column. However, for me, I have an arachnoid cyst, which is like a pillow of water, the size of my fist in the middle of my cranium, which means that water can get into my head, but it has no way of draining down my spinal column. So when they found this out, when they discovered this when I was 4 months, a shunt, which is like a very, very, very long tube or straw, was inserted into my cranium to drain this water out into my peritoneal cavity, my abdomen. Which is great. That completely saved my life. It has meant that, I can go on and function, quote unquote, normally. And I say quote unquote because I'm very blessed and that I'm a very high functioning human with my condition. There are multiple other humans who have my condition, who have the shunt, who are not as high functioning as I am. But either way, that was inserted when I was 4 months. By the time I was 10, I'd had 10 brain surgeries and 24 surgeries in total. About 22 surgeries in total. By the time I was 14, 24 surgeries in total. And that kind of, resulted in some really horrific things, brain damage, don't recommend, 0 stars, not fun. I went from being the top pupil in my class to literally forgetting just basic math, forgetting how to basic directions. Even now, thank God for GPS, because sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 times of going the same route in order for me to remember how to get from A to B. So that there is that component. Being in hospital for weeks on end, and you don't have to have hydrocephalus to know about this, but if you've ever been isolated, quote unquote, hashtag pandemic, you know how much that can impact severely on our mental health and emotional health and social health. And then of course there's the social aspect, the emotional impact of getting called Frankenstein, getting called freak, weirdo, whatever. I now wave my freak flag quite proudly, but when you're
time, I mean,
it's horrible.
And you're talking about from the ages of 4 to 14, so 10 years.
4 months. 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah.
So 14 years of age. That's like your most fragile developmental growth, childhood, years. And you're talking about you are going in and out of massive surgeries and everything you name, psychologically, emotionally, socially, it's a strain and causing all of these challenges I can't fathom.
Well, and you'll know about this being a psychologist, yes.
Yep.
You'll know about adverse childhood experiences, right?
Yeah.
There have been multiple studies and reports on what impacts the mental well-being of an adult. And a lot of them go back to adverse childhood experiences, whether or not some people think it's your life up until the age of 5 that really shape your adult character, mindset, ideas. Some people, it has been suggested, that actually up to the age of 4 months that is the most impactful. And then of course there's recent research that has just dropped that suggests that even our experiences, our trauma that we experience in utero also impacts our adulthood experiences and mindset. So it all sort of compacts on who we are present day. But to get to your initial question, these things, life happens, trauma happens. Hydrocephalus is one thing. I also, want to pay tribute to everything else that I experienced as a young woman, because you may not relate to brain surgery, but you can probably relate to sexism, or colorism, or, judgments on your belief system, or judgments on your body size, body shape, etc., etc. There are so many ways in which our interactions with the world shape who we are
Yeah.
as adults. And so, I was really blessed in many ways. I think, and I often talk about this with my coaching and with my keynote speaking that I do, is that you know no superhero is ever born without experiencing some trauma. Adversity makes for superheroes.
Yes.
Pressure makes for diamonds.
Yes.
So I was lucky enough to have a mother who really supported me figuring out what my superpowers were. And at the age of 5, I decided, and I remember this like vividly. I may not remember much, but I remember this writing down on my 5th birthday that when I grew up, I was going to be a counselor, a teacher, a rock star, and what was the last thing? A fashion designer.
Cool.
And I have not done the fashion designing thing because I'm not a visual person at all. As long as you feel good, I'm happy.
Right.
But for me, being able to do youth empowerment through songwriting coaching and speaking is kind of all of that encompassed in one. Being able to help,
Yeah. Yeah.
help young people to step into their superpowers and
Yes.
write the theme songs to you know, their superhero movie.
Yeah.
It just makes me so excited.
Well, and in so many ways, I think you're all those things. I mean,
Mm.
it's interesting how society and culture really depends upon you being economically successful in capitalistic society to deem yourself as something. You know what I mean? So if you go to a party and somebody's like, "What do you do?" and you're like, "I'm a writer," their first question is, "Well, what's your published work? When's the last time you made money from that?" They want it, but it's like I think that rips away from the heart and the essence of our youth, being like,
Yeah.
you are an artist, you are a writer, you are a poet, you are a teacher. So it's like, here you are doing your youth empowerment work, but every day you really are practicing teaching, counseling, caring for our youth. And you're a damn rock star in my book because you're up on that stage playing your music. You know what I mean? So it may not be the standard way that it looks or the way that culture goes, yes, this is that, but in that 5-year-old's mind,
Yeah.
you're fulfilling all of those things. You are
It's
teaching,
wild.
you are counseling, and you're a rock star. And you're probably doing the fashion design thing just by picking out your outfits and what you wear, and rocking it that way. But it's beautiful, and I love what you said so much, about pain and adversity and what it does for us from a standpoint of it being able to transmutate and
Mm,
create growth and evolution in who we are. And I
mhm.
think I watch so many people, especially young people, struggle with that because our society constantly tells them you should avoid pain and you should seek pleasure. And,
Ah,
we get this idea of like anything that creates discomfort or adversity or challenge or difficulty. I want as little of that as I can, and I want stuff to be easy. But you and I both know it's like when I reflect back on my life, the portions of it where I've grown the most
mm,
simultaneously been the most difficult, the most challenging, the dark night of the soul is
yeah,
where I've learned the most about myself. And it's not that you would willingly go seek that out, but I do think that that cognitive framework changes you to where you start to go, you know what? I'm not going to avoid it. I'm not going to avoid pain anymore. When pain shows up, I'm going to find a way to integrate it into my life and turn it into a superpower and make myself stronger and more empowered as a result of what I've endured. And I
yeah.
think you're a beautiful testament of that and what you're
Thank you.
doing. And then being able to teach these youth, like, yeah, you have that superpower within you, but you're going to have to bust ass for it. You're going to have to go put in work to like, dive in. And that's
Yeah.
where I think your analogy of songwriting being like an MMA fight, it's a fight to pull out your creative heart. That stuff's not easy. Anybody
Mm,
can phone it in and be like, sure, here's a song, here's a verse and a chorus and a thing. But to really listen to your heart, to really take a deep dive and say something that you are feeling and holding on to, either about your parents or your boyfriend or girlfriend or peers, and
yeah.
spill your heart out on paper. When
Yeah.
we see that as humanity, those people are the bravest. Those are the
Yeah.
heroes that, like, man, they're speaking their truth.
Yeah, no, it's you touched on a lot of powerful points, and it reminded me of where, to your point about, especially to your point about um, running away from pain. That's one of the biggest things that is doing, I think, a lot of us a disservice. Um, it's much like we talk a lot about how, well, I say we, the collective we, whoever we is. Um, it's often that we look at our Generation Z in particular, and in fact, I don't know if you're a millennial. I'm a millennial.
What is 82? If I was born in 82,
I think you might be just on the cusp.
I'm right on
Interesting.
the line,
Okay.
which is good because I'm a Gemini anyway. So like I'm
Okay.
sure one day I could be millennial, the other day I could be, yeah.
Gen X, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So either way, so I think we're very quick to sort of look at the younger generation and sort of write them off, sorry, as like the silver spoon mentality, or everyone's a winner, everyone's soft, and I think we're kind of to blame for that. We're the people that are that are telling our young people to seek pleasure. If something's not, if something's broken, don't fix it. Just go out and buy a new one. Even if it's not broken, go out and buy a new one because it's shinier and prettier and whatever. And so we're breeding this or raising this next generation of people that are so scared to do the hard work of what it takes to have that conversation, or somehow figure out a way to show up and own your mistakes and take accountability. And listen, I'm no queen at this at all by any stretch of the imagination, but I will tell you that by leaning into those hard places and into those difficult spaces, that's when I have found I can start to unlock some parts of myself that I did not know existed. And that kind of strength and that resiliency then being channeled into a song or a piece of music or lyrics or even just a chorus, helps me to remember, oh shoot, like I I got this, things may be tough, but I do have the answer, man. It reminds me of a yoga phrase that I know I quote this all the time. I was in Barcelona a few years ago when there was a yoga practice that took place, and the instructor said this one piece of advice, which was, "You are loved, you are love, and everything you could possibly need lives within you." And I'm like, I mean that part,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like to then be able to take that philosophy, put that into songwriting, put that into the coaching that I do with the young people that I work with, it's just it's so important for us to like to help our young people to recognize you
Yes.
don't need to look outside for validation. It's in you. You don't
Yes.
need to look outside to for the next best thing, because you have the ability to make what's right here in front of you the next best thing.
Emma, it's so beautiful. You are loved, you are love, and you have everything you need within you. And
Right.
it's like what, and I get people roast on me all the time because I'm always like culture, society, and I'm a critical psychologist, and I look at the ways that we are indoctrinated and conditioned. But in our capitalistic society, it's like, man, you never ride down the highway and see a billboard that says that. You see a
Yeah.
billboard that says the exact opposite, which says, you know what? You're not worthy. You don't have everything you need within you, and you need to go purchase this thing or obtain this thing in order to find yourself. And
The
so I think,
most the
yeah,
most rebellious act in the world is to love yourself.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so hard. I think about,
Mm.
so my favorite musician of all time is Ben Harper.
Oh, really?
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. He's great.
He's the reason I named the center Eternal Strength. He wrote me a handwritten letter when I was 15 and signed it Eternal Strength, Ben Harper. And
Oh,
so
I love that.
he's my hero. But in one of his song lyrics, he says, it takes 100 miles of love to heal a mile of pain.
100 miles of love to heal a mile of pain.
And so I
Woo.
think about, in a world that's telling our young people, You don't have everything you need. You need to go get more. Your self-worth isn't inherently embedded in you. It's going to take individuals like you, me, community, teachers, mentors to come around and say 100 times, you are loved, you are love, and you have everything you need within you. And most people, the first few times they hear it, they'll be like, yeah, 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 got you. You know, it's almost like the Goodwill Hunting scene. Like this
Yeah.
fault, there's it. And he's like, yeah, I got it. But there's a difference in hearing it and then in really feeling it and taking
Mm.
it in and believing it. And it's
I,
how do we get to that place?
I want to challenge you a little bit
Good.
because
Absolutely not. Game over. See you later. Bye.
uh, you mentioned that the most important thing we can be doing is to, work with our young people to recognize their internal strength. I think one of the best and most impactful ways that we can help our young people is to do the work ourselves as
Yes.
their coaches, teachers, psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, parents, teachers, whatever. Like we need my fiance is he's full of what we call DJ-isms. And his name's DJ.
Okay,
If
cool.
that wasn't clear.
I was either thinking
uh,
he's a DJ or he's an actual DJ.
no, he's not. He runs a self-defense school, but one of his DJ-isms is that attitude reflects leadership. So if a young person is seeing harmful behavior demonstrated by the people that they look up to, then they're going to emulate that said behavior. If we can talk until we're blue in the face to our young people and encourage them to look inside and remember that love comes from the inside and remember that you are powerful beyond measure, to quote Marianne Williamson, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. But if they're not seeing their adults, their leaders, their mentors, their coaches, their therapists, their teachers lead the same way, it's really difficult for them to trust that that works,
Yeah.
let alone dive into that process for themselves. So, yes, and we need to also do the work
And
ourselves.
and beautifully said. And Emma, I think about it a lot. Because here at the center we work with a lot of families. So we
Mhm.
serve young people between 10 and 25 years of age. Now listen, these young people we do what we call radical youth work. So it's very co-collaborative, giving them voice. It's mutual liberation. They teach us, we join with them. It's all this beautiful stuff. But parents, I watch a lot of parents, and I myself am a parent. I got two little daughters, 9 and 6. It's so hard because you want to teach your children this thing, you want them to get it.
Yeah,
And but when you really have that aha moment is you have to model it.
yeah,
You are the mirror. And I think a lot about, I always quote it ad nauseum. Ram Dass says, I work on myself to help others, and I help others to work on myself. But he never says I work on anybody else, because he's like, I can't do another human being's work. All I can do is my own work. And that in turn can help others. It can model for them. So it's
I
like, if you
love that.
really want to help somebody, the best thing you
Right,
could
yeah,
do is to do your own holistic growth work. And that inherently begins to, back to Marianne Williamson, it's you let your own light shine, and it unconsciously gives others permission to do the same. But
yeah,
I think we forget that,
yeah,
it's because it's so easy for us to caretake another and not caretake ourselves. And I watch that with young people a lot too, especially when they fall in love and they have first relationships. I'll watch these young people that are so self um harming.
sacrificing.
Yeah, self-sacrificing, self-harming. But literally I've watched a lot of
Yeah,
young people who self-harm and cut pretty severely. And then I've watched them get into a relationship and spend all night on the phone with their partner, begging them not to cut and literally telling them, you don't need to do this, please don't hurt yourself like that. And I'll try and reflect to them to say, like, those things that you want in your partner, you can do in yourself.
yeah.
So I think it's so hard to do that self work.
It's so you've inspired several trains of thought for me. First of all, your philosophy to youth work and youth development is very in alignment with the philosophies that I got my teaching qualifications through.
Awesome.
So again, I grew up in New Zealand. So I got my teaching qualifications in New Zealand at a place that gave me a very westernized approach to education and teaching, but also incorporated a whole bunch of tikanga Māori teaching principles, which are the Indigenous people of New Zealand. So, and tikanga Māori is the Māori people are, you know, their values and their principles are also very similarly aligned, obviously, to those of like Fijian descent, which is what I am, Samoan descent, Tongan descent, all Pacifica people. We have a very similar way of thinking. And so when you're talking about, you know, an effective leader needs to, or an effective coach or youth worker needs to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. It's so important that young people feel valued to show up as their whole selves so that they can be respected as their whole selves. I tell my students and my clients all the time, you know, when we are in this space together, I am going to learn from you as much as I hope you'll learn from me, because this is a collective place of understanding and growing and learning. If you're not growing, you're dying, and if you're not growing, you're not having fun and you're not enjoying yourself. So let's have some fun together creatively. And then of course that then shows up as when we're in the same space together, I will show up 110% and respect you, which means of course that you will, I would hope, show up 110% and respect me in return. So it's like, it's all these interwoven principles. I actually have a PDF that I give out on the teaching principles that I utilize, because you're the first person in America that I have heard specifically state why, like, and you call it radical youth development, and I'm like, how is that radical? These human beings,
I know.
these are we are trying to, we're trying to like encourage healthy humanhood.
Yes.
We're trying to encourage these young people to learn about autonomy and the power of their essence and their existence. And if we're not giving them the torch and saying, okay, walk with me,
Yeah.
then what are we doing? Okay, so that's enough about that.
No, and you're so spot on. You know, I was so fortunate. First of all, I felt it in my heart. And so I've watched my mom do social work for years. She runs an
Yeah.
advocacy center that works with abused and neglected kids. My grandmother's got her EDD in psychology, but I always, throughout my study, and I got chastised for this in different ways, but throughout, I was very humanistic and person-centered in everything I did. It just made sense to me. And like you said, it wasn't this profound, you know, new alternative way. I was like, oh, you treat people like they're a holistic human being, and
Right.
and you care and you bring your true authentic self. So like in psychotherapy, people would be like, that's Wes, he's very Rogerian. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
Carl Rogers is the only dude that really made sense to me out of all the psychoanalysts and their approaches. But radical
wild.
youth work, those tenets, my dissertation committee, Dr. Hans Scott Meyer, Kathy Scott Meyer, married couple, they're amazing. They've done some profound youth work, and it's based on those tenets of mutual liberation, co-collaboration, a flattening of the developmental hierarchy, a joining with youth to learn from them, and then a co-creative and co-collaborative life force expression. And all these things, for me, there's no other way to work with youth.
No, no.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't ever have an adult walk into a space and say, okay, you know, please tell me how I've messed up my entire life and I will follow everything you say, A, B, and C. That's
Right.
that's not how it works. That's not how people work. We're wanting to, again, take the silver spoon away from our teenagers and give them a book, give
Yes.
them tools to help them help themselves, you know, and by, yeah, anyways. So, so that was the first point I wanted to, that you kind of lit up in me. And the second point is, I don't know if you're aware, but I'm based in Washington, D.C. now. And I actually had the absolute honor of writing a song for Marianne Williamson back in 2020,
Awesome.
when she announced for the first time that she was running for president back then, and I know that she has made the public announcement that she's running again this next election. But
Yeah,
she
I didn't even
is,
know. That's
oh,
awesome.
well, there we go. There we go.
How I
So,
vote. Easy. That's the easiest decision I've made in the last 10 years. Great. Marianne Williamson for president. Can we please
amen.
get that
Amen.
locked in?
And the song I wrote was called Living Proof, and the whole premise is, we are living proof that love wins. And, so it's to your point of like, if everybody could remember that saying, her famous saying of our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, and it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us, so on and so forth. You know, if we all remember that, great. It's hard for people to remember long, however inspirational quotes.
Yeah.
Whether it's Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marianne Williamson, Cherry Chisholm, like whoever it is that you're wanting to quote, it's very hard to take those messages and remember them, especially when you are a young person.
Yes.
But do you know what is easy to remember, Weston?
Hmm.
A song.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what, again, one of the things that I'm just like super passionate about is like we have these amazing minds that and tools and people that we can like go to for advice and research to be inspired and to be driven and to be, become our best selves. But if you're a teenager, especially Gen Z, and your attention span is that of a goldfish, then one of the best ways that we can facilitate that is through, creative means. It doesn't have to be songwriting. It can be interpretive dance. It can
Right.
be, rapping. It can be, I don't know, listening to classical music, or, I mean, there's why we sing the alphabet.
Right. And you make such a great point. And Emma, I think, and I know you're on a time crunch too, because you and I could just keep, man, I already feel it. We could rock a 4-hour podcast easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, when we look at music, it's very easy because we've been around it for so long to just dismiss it. But when you really, really deconstruct music, it is hypnosis, and it is vibrational frequency
Yep.
with lyrics, with repetition. And
Yep.
it is the earliest cultural form of trance, of
Yep.
putting people in a trance state, a hypnotic state, and being able to program our subconscious. And so it's so powerful. And that's where I think about in a world where so much music is wrought with negativity and
Mm-hmm.
messages that can be very harmful and damaging. I'm so grateful that you are out there and you exist and you are teaching young people not just how to listen to certain types of music and pull love from it and to get their vibrational frequency attuned and aligned and connected, but you are giving them the tools to go make their own.
Thank you.
It is
That's
beautiful.
I appreciate that very
Yeah.
much. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Emma, I think it's awesome. So here's what I'd love to do. I know you got to get ready and you got a session, but I am so grateful for us connecting. I know it was wild and we had to reschedule a bunch, but we've done it now. What I'd love to do is just stay in touch
Of course. Yeah.
again, and we can have a little bit of a deeper dive and talk. And then anytime you ever make it out to Atlanta, I would love to give you a tour of Eternal Strength and have you
I
meet.
would love that.
Awesome.
I love Atlanta. It has a very special place in my heart. Little Five Points is my jam.
Yeah.
The shopping there is phenomenal, and especially considering that DC is very sophisticated, and I'm sometimes very not. So I like to go shopping when I'm in Atlanta. I'm just saying, but no, I would love to. It's definitely on my bucket list over the next couple of months to come and visit.
Please keep me
Yeah,
posted. Let me know. And then before you go, how can people get in touch with you
of
and
course.
get basically more info from you and just your songwriting, your music, but just look up more on you? What's all the ways that they can find that?
Cool. So the first thing is every month this year, I am releasing a new single that is in accordance to a cause or an awareness that is being celebrated or honored that month. So, for example, February was Valentine's Day. I wrote a song when I was 14 called Soon, which I released in February. Last month was obviously International Women's Day and Women's History Month. So I released a song that I wrote when I was 11 called The Show in accordance to that. This month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I have released a single called Barbed Wire on the 1st of April. That is a song that I wrote when I was 15 to talk about that struggle. The actual produced radio version of that track will be dropping on the 14th, so in a couple of days. But you may have noticed that I'm saying all these things and then I'm saying, oh, and I wrote that back then. I wrote that back then. All of the songs I'm releasing this year are songs I wrote when I was a teenager to help me work through my own traumas and struggles as a young person. So it's not just about, present day empowerment. It's also about just, again, leading by example as opposed to just talking the talk. So that's the first thing.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. And you can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, all the things.
And
Emma
people just put
G.
in Emma G.
Yeah, I'm the brown Emma G. There
Okay.
is a paler complexioned Emma G. She's a light and brighter is what I call her. She is far more gangster than I am. She does rap and R&B type stuff.
Okay.
I'm not that way inclined. Unfortunately, that was not a gene that was passed on to me. So that's the first thing. But if you want to keep in touch with me on social media, Emma G Music or Emma G Speaks on TikTok, or emmagmusic.com on, for my website and my blog and, all the things I'm doing over there.
Awesome. Emma, thank you, thank you, thank you for your time, for your energy, for your work, for everything that you are doing for the community at large. And we will talk again soon.
I appreciate that, Weston. Thank you.
Awesome.